I'd like to welcome all of you to the In the Thick of It, the Overseas Press Club of America's tribute to the courageous journalists who have kept the media of our nation alive and free as wars engulfed their country. We're fortunate to have with us, live from Ukraine, 3 of the journalists who the OPC has helped with emergency grants through a program funded by Sony and other donors. We're hoping to continue this program with the generous help from others who subscribe as well to our mission. A link is available for donations on the OPC of America's homepage. I'm David Andelman, a past president of the OPC, CNN columnist, and author of Substack's Andelman Unleashed, and I'll be your moderator today from New York. From Ukraine, we're joined by Alla Koren, editor of the local newspaper Time, People, Events in the town of Sarata in the Odessa region. She's worked at the paper for almost 40 years. Alina Kravchenko was working for Donbass Online, a regional TV and radio company in the Luhansk region of eastern Ukraine when the war started. After her neighborhood suffered massive shelling, she evacuated to Ivano-Frankivsk in western Ukraine and is evacuated yet again, now works remotely for the National Union of Journalists of Ukraine on the project Journalists Are Important, which tells the stories of Ukrainian journalists who suffered because of the war. And Glib Golovchenko is chairman of the Mykolaiv Press Club and president of the All-Ukrainian Association of Press Clubs. A lifelong journalist for newspapers, then television, he's working to provide humanitarian aid to journalists and others in Mykolaiv and producing a video series called War Heroes of the Mykolaiv region. And so we can all understand each other, we have our translator, Marina Prichodko, a Ukrainian activist and volunteer based in New York and currently on the executive leadership team of the nonprofit Razom for Ukraine. To start off, why don't each of you tell us a bit about the challenges the war has posed to you as a journalist and how your organization has managed to survive? Let's begin with Alla.
Пані Алла, питання було про те, з якими складностями ви стикалися в останній рік, і як ви самі або зі своєю організацією, як журналістка, або в іншій сфері боролися через ці складності, і як ви виживаєте в умовах нових?
Ну, я скажу вам, що 24 лютого, воно, хоча і були якісь передумови, але воно нас застало так, що ми розгубилися спочатку. Але ненадовго. Ми зорієнтувалися, і так вийшло, що ми пропустили, не вийшли тільки 2 номери. А вже у березні ми вийшли. Хочу вам навіть показати свою газету, бо саме так вона виражала наші емоції і наші почуття. Перша шпальта. Ми зорієнтувалися, зрозуміли, що ми потрібні. Треба роз'яснювати людям, що відбулося. І треба було якось їх орієнтувати у той лавині інформації, яка обрушилася на всіх. І ми почали виходити так у звичному своєму порядку, і більше жодного номера ми не пропустили. Мені, мабуть, треба зупинятися трохи, так?
Так, дякую. So when February 24th came around, there were, of course, warnings and there was an ominous feeling, but we weren't expecting quite the scale of what happened. In the beginning, it is true, we were lost, but not for long. Only 2 editions didn't come out of the newspaper, and we quickly came together to make sure that the newspaper did come out as soon as possible in March, and that was the edition that she showed you on the screen of the newspaper. The team and Alla realized that the newspaper was needed, and the newspaper needed to continue working to tell people what was going on, to bring current events and to cover events of what was developing and happening in real time. And very quickly, actually, things returned to normal in terms of the newspaper and how it worked. They just found a new sense of inspiration and motivation.
Відносно труднощів, то відразу погіршився наш матеріальний стан. Наша газета невелика, вона місцева, і люди звикли там давати привітання, давати подяки. Наш невеличкий бізнес там давав обяви свої, рекламу. А тут все зупинилося, і все погіршилося, і все обрушилося. І ми залишилися без цих надходжень від реклами.
It was
Так,
It
так.
was probably the most complicated obstacle to get around was probably the marketing aspect of the newspaper. The newspaper is relatively small, and it was used by the community and the people who read and received the newspaper to order congratulations or make announcements for other small businesses, to advertise themselves in the newspaper, and this was the main moving wheel of the newspaper before February 24th, but all of this obviously stopped because this was no longer relevant for the continuation of life after February 24th.
Why don't we go on to our next to Alina and hear from her about her challenges.
Продовжуємо з Аліною, може? Таке саме питання.
Так, дякую. Ще раз рада вас вітати і дякую за таку можливість сьогодні говорити мені не тільки, напевно, за себе, а за більшість моїх колег в Україні, які переживають нелегкі часи. Якщо можна, translate, please.
Alina is very grateful to be here. It means a lot to not only her, but all of her colleagues, journalists in Ukraine to participate in programs such as this.
В нас, зокрема, трошечки на Сході вся та історія почалася ще раніше, у 2014 році, і тому 24 лютого фактично це той день, коли стало зрозуміло, це день, який вирішив долі багатьох журналістів нашої Луганської області, тому що саме цей день стало зрозуміло, що жодне телебачення, жодне регіональне видання вже не буде працювати, оскільки всі знали і розуміли, що нам потрібно евакуюватися, на жаль, і евакуювати техніку і своє обладнання.
So for Alina and her colleagues, actually, the February 24th wasn't met with such surprise because actually in Eastern Ukraine, the war began all the way in 2014, and they had this experience already. But on February 24th of last year, it was understood that they would need to meet this reality yet again, and the fate of journalism and journalists in Ukraine was going to be decided once again. For the people working in and around Luhansk at the time of February 24th, the start of the full-scale invasion, it meant putting many things on hold and instead focusing on evacuating both themselves physically and all their equipment and their livelihoods, including their professions.
Зокрема, я, доки безпекова ситуація дозволяла, ще мала прямі включення як власний кореспондент на телеканали центральні, зокрема з сусідніх областей. Потім зрозуміло, що наприкінці березня мала вже виїжджати, евакуюватися. Зрозуміло, що відновити на безпечній території мовлення ми не змогли і фактично стикнулася з тою проблемою, що надалі я маю вже працювати як самостійна одиниця, тому що медіа, які були на безпечних територіях, теж переживали нелегкі часи, і тобто штатних працівників вони розглядати майже не могли. Тобто було дуже складно влаштуватися десь на роботу в колектив, і тому я перейшла в фріланс.
So as soon as the full-scale invasion began, there were very actually few live news broadcasts. It was difficult to make these happen, and before the end of March, Alina had to focus on evacuating herself and getting to safer territory within Ukraine. But unfortunately, even at that time, there was no really such thing as safe territory within Ukraine. And she had to make the difficult decision to work alone as a freelance journalist and a freelance correspondent, because it was just too difficult. There were too many obstacles, even for teams of journalists and media that were working in quote unquote more safe territories, and it was not possible to work as part of a team. So the decision was made for her to work as a freelance journalist.